Welcome all, welcome all. We have another invaluable radio host turned podcaster and author today. We got Seth Andrews of both the Thinking Atheist as well as True Stories. Welcome.
It's nice to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
Absolutely. So you've been at this for quite a while, since 1990.
Yeah, it's been a long time. I was kind of a fresh-faced, guy getting into the radio business, probably for the wrong reasons. Back then it was like, I wanted to be famous isn't the word, but
I would have been
I want
1
to be
year
on the
old
radio
when you got into it.
And then I really fell in love with, the creativity of it, the technical side of it. Fell in love with serving an audience and being a part of that culture, and and so here I am all these years later, and I'm still doing a version of radio. It's just on the internet, which gives me a broader reach. Gives me a lot more creative freedom, and formatically, we have a lot more latitude. Where when you're doing corporate-based radio, there's a lot of restrictions, time requirements. They restrict even what you can say. And so here I'm totally free, and it's been pretty amazing.
Unfortunately, we've all had to kind of combat a lot of that, where it's just like, okay, I get that this is what the higher ups want, but this is not my voice at all. Now that we've reduced it to that, you did get into it because you were very inspired by faith music. Now that that's been flushed out of your system, what kind of music would you say you're really into now, and really like hearing on independent satellite and even college stations?
When I am not in the studio, say I'm out driving on a plane or between, speaking gigs or just walking the dog. When I listen to audio, it's usually talk. I listen to a lot of audiobooks. Right now I'm in the middle. I'm 9 hours into an 18-hour autobiography by Patrick Stewart, Jean-Luc Picard from.
I've heard the promo on Conan. I can't wait to read it.
Amazing. And, I was thinking when I first saw the time, I was like, 18 hours. And honestly, I will not want it to end. I find myself smiling, and I listen to a lot of that kind of thing. If I listen to music, they say that the music that you fall in love with between the ages of 14 and 21 becomes some of your favorite music for the rest of your life. And I think there may be some merit to that. So when I go back, it's when I wasn't listening to Christian music, I did enjoy Journey and Kansas and that kind of thing. So I do find myself going back to some of the old 80s classics and
if you're
listening
still
to
thinking
that.
about it, it's probably not Once Upon a Time, I love this anymore.
It's just a good song is a good song is a good song. And I enjoy newer stuff as well. But mostly when I'm looking to listen to something, it's going to be an audiobook, something that I picked out. I'm huge into true crime. I love ghost stories. I'm big into autobiographies. I just finished listening again for the second time to Bruce Campbell's autobiography called Chins Could Kill. Of course, he's one of the stars of the Evil Dead franchise, and I'm a big horror movie buff. And, it's a nice distraction. It's nice to be inside somebody else's head for a change.
Absolutely. Well, would you consider, there's a lot of historical, you could definitely put either of your podcasts under history. Would you consider them kind of minor true crime as well? Because you do kind of.
My shows?
Yeah. Because you do bring up some issues.
Well, the show I do that is related to atheism and religion, we get into cult superstitions, brain psychology.
Yeah.
We talk about the culture. Those types of things probably won't fit into the true crime format. There's a lot of storytelling in it. There's a lot of and we'll do. I do an annual Ghost Stories broadcast where we some of those involve things that really happened, murder houses, and of course we spin off of the truth of the murder into the legends that sort of spawned out of that.
We'll return after these messages.
If you like small-town mystery, crazy news, and wild history, then the Florida Men on Florida Man podcast is for you. Each week, Josh Mills and Wayne McCarty bring you the absolute best Florida has to offer. So if you're looking for a show that's safe for the family, but funny enough to help you escape everyday life, then listen to the Florida Men on Florida Man podcast. That's Florida Men, plural, on Florida Man podcast.
Hey, it's Brent Pope, the host of Breakfast with Brent Pope. You've seen me on some of your favorite TV shows saying things like, "Give it up, Jimmy. You got to sink this putt to win." On Breakfast with Brent Pope, I sit down with guests from the entertainment world, and we do it all over breakfast. Or should I say Brentfast? Every week on Brentfast, you get inside Hollywood info and tips, great breakfast wrecks and booty debates. Most of all, you get the most delightful 30 minutes of your week. So dig in. It's Brentfast time. Listen at Brentfast.com, Apple Podcasts, or wherever fine podcasts are found.
The Jacked Up Review Show podcast is honored to be part of the Blind Knowledge Podcast Network. Join anytime, talk the talk, and enjoy yourselves. There's something enlightening for everyone with this crowd of cool cats. Check them out.
But on True Stories with Seth Andrews, there is a lot of, we'll get into some famous crime stories, some obscure ones. We talk about some. In fact, I've got one we just released about a woman named Victoria, who was a veteran skydiver, and her chute failed. Her second chute failed, and it turned out
such a wild story.
Her husband sabotaged the chute. So we get into how she barely survived and how she was insured for a ton of money, and turns out her husband tried to kill her. And that kind of thing does weed its way into True Stories every week or so.
Absolutely. And I think what I really like about, I got recommended Thinking Atheist thanks to Hemant Mehta.
Oh yeah. He's good people.
Absolutely. And he recommended this and the Scathing Atheist, and it was just so cool to just kind of have this, again, just you guys both make use of the format and just open up a dialogue. That was the whole point of the Friendly Atheist, to just say, hey, just because we're not subscribing to a religion doesn't mean we're here to just spread some haterade here as well. We're here to be the bigger guys.
And in I think the case of my show, I really wanted to be a hub for what I call seekers. And these are people doubting and they're in the faith, but this is strange territory. They're terrified somebody's going to find out. They're terrified of going to hell. Maybe they're just curious. And so I may pop up in a Google search. And for that reason, while we do occasionally go pretty hard at fundamentalist religions, it's a show that is also kind to people. And I admit outright, there are lovely, amazing, wonderful, moral, good religious people, just like I've met some horrible atheists. People are people, for better and for worse, and to humanize these conversations and to encourage people that questions shouldn't bother a loving deity. A loving Father God wouldn't be upset or threatened by saying, hey, I need you to make sense. And if you don't, I'm going to keep asking. And that has been sort of the temperature of my work, especially in the last 5 years. I used to be a little harder edged, a little sharper, a little more sarcastic, and I have my moments. But these days, I think it's a softer approach. And for me, it's been easier. It's been better for my heart. And I think it's been more palatable for people who are listening. The people who wanted the hard edge, swear fest, they've gone elsewhere. But the people, I think, who want to de-escalate, lower the temperature a little bit, have conversation and storytelling, those are the people that are still with me today.
Absolutely. And that is a good point, in that you want to kind of dissect this and realize, hey, we're not saying it's one or the other. We got to get rid of that whole, type of arguing and dissection of people. And you want to also kind of just remind everybody, hey, the insecurities and fear mongering should not be a part of your world in any capacity. You know.
I wasn't an evil person when I was a Christian. I wasn't stupid. I wasn't, I was just the victim of bad ideas, but I genuinely wanted to do the right thing in the world. And I had a lot of love in my life, and I expressed a lot of love and goodness and goodwill. And, if I looked through the looking glass back through time and I saw my younger self, I would not be a lot of the horrible names that I have heard some atheists call religious people. I deserved better. And I think we do find toxic people. We find people who have weaponized their religion to excuse and promote bigotry and hatred. I mean, that's a whole other conversation. But everyday people who are just trying to get up in the morning and take care of the kids and pay the bills and survive and make the world better in their way, they may be a victim of some bad ideas religiously, but they don't wake up saying, today I would like to hate someone. They wake up and say, today I would like to find opportunities to make life better for someone. And many of those people are religious. And I think the honest person has to acknowledge that.
Totally. Way different from, from others who are doing hate crimes and then using religion to hide behind it. It's just,
yeah.
So such a separate entity altogether. And you have a wonderful, very, you kind of reference kind of the voices based off the inspirations that you've referenced before, but it's kind of a mixture between kind of noir and just kind of just a very smooth irony as well.
What are we speaking about?
Especially on true stories, but you're just really good at just kind of just remarking out, just kind of dryly is like, yeah, that happened.
We talking about like my particular style, my vocal style, when it relates to storytelling?
How you emphasize it, and you always keep me in suspense, even if I'm pretty sure I have heard the story or not. It doesn't matter. Just the journey is really good at keeping us in suspense.
Thank you. Well, when I first got into the business, I remember thinking I have to sound like a radio guy. So we call them pukers back then, where you're trying to sound like a radio guy. And I'll hear podcasters do this. Thanks so much for joining us for the show today. Going to be great. And you're kind of talking at people. And it took me a while to calm down and begin to find my own voice. Who am I? And what personality would I like to have sort of flow in through the microphone into the ears and lives of listeners. And it finally occurred to me, let's talk to people. Let's communicate with people. Let's storytell in that way. And so I've had a lot of time to iron that out. And fortunately, people have responded to it. When it comes to true stories with Seth Andrews, it's a 5 to 8 minute short form vignette that has enough detail to take you down the road, but not so much that I lose momentum. I don't want you to get like bored or burned out or whatever. I want you to really take the journey. But it's formatted after the old Paul Harvey AM radio broadcasts of the 70s, 80s, and 90s. I think he passed away in the early 2000s. For those who don't know, Paul Harvey was an ABC News broadcaster who did a feature every weekday called The Rest of the Story. And his was only 4 minutes. And he would take you down a road. He would spin a yarn. He would tell you about something real. And then at the end, he would pull the rug out from underneath you with a fact that blows your mind. Or maybe it's coming, but you're not sure. So you have to wait for the end. And when he says it, you're like, oh my God, that's amazing. And then he would say, and now you know the rest of the story. Well, when he died, nobody was really doing that format. His son took over, and his son was terrible. His son tried, gave it everything he had, but you just can't replicate that in that exact way. But I thought, well, if no one's really doing the 5 minutes vignette,
you're going to do your homage to him.
you take him down that road, and occasionally, when possible, give him a kicker at the end. I'll bet I could do my version. Mine is formatted a little bit differently. I can take a little more time with it. Sometimes I'll spin off into a few different directions and then bring you back. but probably 6 to 7 out of 10 shows have a surprise or a kicker at the end. And instead of saying the rest of the story, I say, and that's a true story. I'm up to
Yes.
200 some shows. People seem to really enjoy it. It's politics free. It's religion free. It's family friendly. It's just kind of evergreen. You can listen to it with your kids. You can listen to it with great grandma. Everybody can play along, and I've enjoyed formatting it in that way.
Totally. It's a wonderful playground, and we never know what direction it's going to go into. And even if it's a somewhat morbid crime, you're able to keep it lighter and remind us, hey, this happened, but there's another catch-22 to this.
And I try to set that up a little bit. Hey, this is kind of a heavy one. Or this one takes us to a dark place, but I think you will be compelled by the story. And this gives people the option if they want to jump in, and they always do. They always want to find out what's going on. Some people like the darker ones.
Yeah.
But I always try to give you a little content warning to make sure, hey, hang on, this one's going to be intense, but it's pretty crazy. Check out what happened. So, yes.
Very much so. And when do you have anything that's coming up that you would also love to promote?
Well, my schedule actually is loosening a little bit as we get into the holidays, which is nice. It's been a great year, but it's been a lot of travel. It's been a lot of, producing 2 podcasts pretty much single-handedly has been pretty intense. I mean, so it'll be nice to be able to spend a little time with Natalie. Next year, I'll be back kind of traveling and speaking. I'm doing a presentation called Seth Andrews versus God. Who is the better intelligent designer?
Right.
And where that came from was I've just finished narrating the audio of the book by zoologist and anatomy professor, Dr. Abby Hafer. She has a book called The Not So Intelligent Designer, where she gets into things about our bodies that are really not well designed. If you thought someone put this together, this is bad. Like, there are better ways to
Right.
do this. And we can find better ways that it has been done in nature and other creatures. And so I was inspired by the book, which I think is going to release on Audible by the end of the year, I believe.
Sweet.
But I'm doing a speech where I'm like, all right, fine. If I was given the reins, if I had the option, and so I go through and talk about this, instead of being right-handed or left-handed, why don't we have both hands that are, dexterous, and they can both take commands from the brain? And, why in the world would you make a hand dominant and the other one almost useless? And we talk about I would make skin that doesn't get cancer from our main source of light on the planet, right?
Yeah.
And point by point by point, I go through, and it's a fun one. There's a lot of humor. There's a lot of fancy, flashy slides.
You got to
in
be
it.
witty about it, because it's just like you have to remind everybody. I mean, I think my eyes got awoken when my grandmother, who was also a former teacher and an absolute mentor to me, had passed away from bone cancer. And my grandfather kind of just shrugged off a lot of people, saying, hey, if there's a greater power, he wouldn't take away the nicest person on the planet. Yeah. And it is kind of interesting how we're also kind of having to do so much biohacking. Is like, if we got the best bodies, why do we have to remind our guts and bones how to function?
I'm amazed at many of the people who say that the eye is perfectly intelligently designed, and
Yeah.
the people who are telling me that are wearing bifocal prescription lenses for vision correction.
I'm wearing nighttime glasses, for goodness sakes. I have to remind people, hey, I know what time of day it is.
A lot of we intervene so often to try to better our condition in ways that science has informed. And so I think so often we miss out on opportunities to show our appreciation for what science has done and how we have advanced and been able to solve our problems. It's funny, I'm a sucker for these videos on YouTube. I was watching a couple of days ago about people who were deaf and had cochlear implants, and their parents or friends are rolling phone video in the room as they activate the implant, and these people are able to hear. for the first time, or even for the first time in years since they lost their hearing, and they invariably just break into tears of joy,
Yeah.
because they are now hearing in that way the world around them. And this is an amazing example of how science has done what prayers have not. And I think, it's something we have to talk about out there.
We totally do. And it seems like, I mean, Thanksgiving is about to pass us by, but it's interesting how it kind of still comes down to a bit of that, where you have to politely change the conversation. But now that we're seeing how even more divided we are as a society, we can't just tiptoe around it. We got to literally say our truths, while also, again, reminding each other that this all impacts us one way or the other, regardless of whether we agree with it or not. And everything from getting better sleep to mental health to even just time and money and just your overall work routine. It seems like everybody is just afraid to just confront the inevitable.
I've said in the past that if somebody wants to thank God for the food, no, okay, knock yourself out. But I sure don't want to see us ignore the people who provided the food and prepared the food and clean up the mess, and
Yeah.
that's often we sacrifice human endeavor, human sacrifice at the altar of the Almighty. And
Oh, absolutely. Janitors are my heroes.
janitors.
Yes.
Oh, I see.
They
Well, I
put up
mean,
with everything.
people, people who serve others are often, and we know this is true in many service industries. We know it's certainly true in the medical industry and in the caregiving industries. And so if you want to offer up your petitions to the Almighty, wherever he or she or it is, whatever, knock yourself out. But I sure would like to see us remember that human intervention, human healers are all around us, and they deserve our appreciation as well.
1,000%. How about all those construction workers? Yeah.
Yeah, anybody and everybody who is a creator, builder, repairer, anybody who is able to put their hands, their ideas, their imaginations, their force of will in motion to improve life for others. These are people who deserve to be acknowledged and recognized.
1,000%. And I'm backtracking just slightly before we go. Did you go to any university or have any other course that is still going on and you would recommend to your peers who are also pursuing a similar career path?
Well, it's funny. A lot of people have asked, would you recommend a 4-year degree in broadcasting? And my answer is always hell no. And for a couple of reasons. First of all, if you are looking to become a broadcaster beyond, if you're not in the podcast verse, but you're trying to work for corporate radio, that's a tough one. It's a tough business. It's tough to get in, to stay in. I saw veterans of 30 years get handed their pink slips. If you do get in, you're normally a slave of corporations making not a whole lot of money, and you will learn more on the job than you ever learn in a classroom, because things in broadcasting and similar fields, the technology and the formats and the rules are often fluid. They change. And it's funny, when I was in school, I learned more 2 weeks working on the job than I learned in 2 years in school.
Oh my word. Yeah.
So when it comes to that, I think it's situational. But if you're looking at straight broadcasting, my advice would be to mentor and learn with people who know it. There are the idea of learning over the course of years what you can learn on the job and get paid to learn in the field. But I don't even really recommend AM/FM radio to anybody anymore. In the universe of Spotify, of Apple Podcasts, of podcast in general, where you can set your own pace. Podcast equipment is relatively inexpensive. Sure, you're a needle in a stack of needles because there's 4 million people doing it, but you can do it on your own terms. You can fill a niche. You can swear. You don't have consultants breathing down your neck. And I think there's a lot more merit to that. And while it is difficult, I think, to get noticed with all the noise of podcasts in the world, I would point somebody to doing that much more than I would ever point them to tapping on the door of a corporation to get into AM, FM radio these days.
Oh, sweet. And see, this is why I love doing these kinds of chats, because there's just such raw honesty. And you know, and as you do with already your format, you're just trying to go for just some kind of solution without, help impact people without anyone getting hurt. And this is
play to your gifts. I've had people come to me and they're like, I really want to be on the radio, or I want to do this or that. And I always start with, well, what are your gifts? What are you good at? What's the desire of your heart? But what's your tool set? I've seen people who want to start a podcast who have a big heart, a lot of desire, but they don't have the tools. They don't have the ability to pull it off. It's not really your thing. What is your thing? Yeah. Maybe you are an artist in another way. Maybe you have the gift of building or doing something else. Are you good at writing? Can you put together something in written form that might blow everybody's socks off? Is there another expression? There's a vacuum that you can fill. So I always tell people two things: play to your strengths and then start where you are. And those are the first steps, I think, to any kind of creation, activism, etc., if you're trying to make a dent in this world.
Perfect. Thank you ever so much for just kind of just opening up and reminding others they got to do the same. Where can we find you on the interwebs?
I'm easy to find. Just go to sethandrews.com. Everything is linked right there. And I appreciate the opportunity to hang out. Thanks for talking to me.
Totally. In and out.
All right. Have a good day.
All right. Be safe out there.
Follow us on the web on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. The podcast is available on Podbean, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Anchor, Apple, and anywhere else podcasts are available. Feel free to review our show and leave comments on any of those sites. Thanks a million for listening.
It's a jacked up review show.